we sort of always, Shoma, think of popular culture as being something very benign, something that is meant to entertain, something that is meant to take you away and distract you from everyday life. Except that in this case, popular culture has become, sort of the chief tool through which people are being radicalized.
Kunal Purohit is a young journalist who's written a very, very important book because it is under the radar of our attention, is a book called H-Pop, which is about the pop stars of the Hindutva movement. Poetry, music, publishing, story writing, YouTube channels that are weaponized to create a certain kind of fabric and mood in the country. And this is done through popular mediums. It's not through overt political power, and that's what makes it so powerful. As Aruna said, can the two religions come together to speak outside of these stereotyped frameworks? And Kunal Purohit has written a very, very humanizing book where he's looked at three people who have a certain vision and then are perpetuating it to millions of others. This is a world that is outside of our usual radar of attention, and that makes it a very, very urgent book. And so to listen to his experience of tracking this story, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Kunal Purohit. Hi, thank you for being here. Kunal, thank you so much for being here. And as I said, your book was hugely eye-opening for me as well. There's this whole subculture that none of us are really tuned into. So you've picked on three characters, and I'd like you to take the audience through that. But first, again, the pivotal question. You're a journalist, you're mapping the news of the day. How did this book come into sort of your imagination? How did you think of doing the book? What was that pivotal incident?
Thank you, Shoma. Thank you, all of you, for being here. I hear that in Chennai, the graveyard shift starts after 8 p.m. or so. So it's great that I still see so many faces in the audience. Look, Shoma, as a journalist, I've been tracking, hate crimes and generally the rhetoric around religious hate for a while now. And one thing that I saw in my experiences as a journalist traveling to all of these places is that I think there was something fundamental happening which we were all missing. Because we were looking at every lynching, every riot, every sort of hate speech that happens as exceptions, as events, as aberrations to normal behavior, right? So we, media people like me, journalists like me, would go to the ground and would cover these as events, as something that has just been a flash in the pan sort of a thing. But doing that for a while, I realized that I think we were missing the story. What has happened now is that there has been a whole process that has actually allowed communal frenzy to build up to such a point where riots and hate crimes and lynchings are just an expression of all of that built up anger and hate. And that is the story that I think a lot of us have ended up missing. So what the book essentially has tried to do is just capture that process, right? Has captured how that hate has built up, and I focused on the use of popular culture. We sort of always, Shoma, think of popular culture as being something very benign, something that is meant to entertain, something that is meant to take you away and distract you from everyday life. Except that in this case, popular culture has become, sort of the chief tool through which people are being radicalized and through which millions of people are being radicalized in the everyday. So the three popular culture forms that I've focused on in the book are music, poetry, and publishing, which is the creation of these publishers who only and only publish books about Hindutva. So to sort of try and understand that story, I chose one character each. I chose a singer who only sings Hindutva songs. This 25-year-old singer from Haryana. For the poetry part of it, I choose this young poet from Lucknow. and he only and only does poetry around Hindutva issues. And the third part is the publisher, and I've again sort of looked at this person from Delhi who used to be a journalist, by the way, and then has decided that his full-time work has to be to bring out books that continuously talk about Hindutva. And all of these three people, Shoma, what they do is they're not just looking at things happening in the now. The idea is to create a narrative around Hindutva in the way that you start from the past, So you re-look at historical characters like Gandhi and Nehru and so on. You re-look at historical events like the partition, like the Khilafat movement, like the freedom struggle, and you reimagine it in the Hindutva light. So Gandhi, for instance, becomes, a lodestar of sorts for a lot of a lot of sort of poetry, a lot of music, a lot of books and literature, which castigate him and glorify his assassination. And then they sort of say that he was a Muslim stooge, he was always, in favor of Pakistan, never about India. So the past is one aspect, the present is another, and in the present they're constantly trying to find ways to push and stoke anger and hate against Muslims, against Christians, against, as Aruna said, against Andolanjivis, against the activists. And they're trying to reimagine the future that all of you must want. The future of India being a Hindu Rashtra. The future of India being Muslim and minority-less. So these are the broad sort of gamuts in which Hindutva pop exists, and essentially this is what the book is trying to sort of track down.
So, you did not meet them as a sting investigator or a sting journalist, but you were actually tracking their story over several years, and they knew that you were going to write a book. So, again, talking about that human connection, how did that form? And tell us how you made a relationship with these people, and what was your own personal reaction to these people,
So, Aruna said something very interesting about the dialogue, right? The dialogue breaking down. And I think one reason why that has happened is also because journalists like us have stopped engaging in trying to break down what is happening across us. I think some of us have been guilty of playing into our own biases so much that we now no longer want to report on people we don't agree with. And then unfortunately, liberal politics in this country has fallen into the trap of not engaging and not wanting to engage with anything that sounds different from their value set. Thankfully, journalism doesn't allow you the luxury, right? It doesn't allow you to say, I'm not going to bother about reporting on people whose values I don't share, or whose political ideologies are different from mine. I think now more than ever, Shoma, journalists like us have to be out there having dialogues like these, having conversations, or just reporting deeply on what a broad section of society is saying. Why are they saying what they're saying? And then, look, it's a very, very delicate time for the country, and I think it's possibly the most dangerous phase for the country in terms of communalism, because all of these years we've seen different phases of communalism. We've seen the big riot phase, right, where a big riot would happen and it would polarize people for days and months. Then we saw the phase of smaller, lynchings and smaller sort of clashes in the village. What we are now seeing is something way more potent, I would say, and way more dangerous, which is everyday communalism. Right? Now, you no longer need a riot, you no longer need, a hate speech, you no longer need a lynching, but on an every single day basis, hate is able to reach you through your WhatsApp, through your social media, and it's easier than ever before to radicalize people. And that's essentially what all of these H-pop stars have also done. They've realized that it's now hate is extremely accessible. All you need to do is sort of click on your phone a few times, and you can listen to songs, you can listen to poetry, which will radicalize you, which will evoke emotions of anger and hate against minorities. So in times like these, Shoma, it's more than important for journalists to go out and to be able to tell people that this is what is happening. Right? In my case, that popular culture can be weaponized and popular culture can be used to actually rile you up and make you hate people who are living next to you.
So, it was fascinating. Will you share with the audience that Kavi Singh, the girl who's the singer, she was almost like a constructed identity, and they had her family was living with a Muslim landowner, not a landowner, a house owner, who actually did not take rent from her family because they were in difficult financial situations, So that's such a odd anomaly. So do talk about this girl's story because it was fascinating. And did you warm to her? Did you understand why she was doing what she was doing? Help the audience understand what kind of a figure is a vehicle for this.
Right, so, the book started in 2019, and I ended up spending about 4 years traveling with all of these people. I would go to, smaller concerts, Kavi Sammelans. I would, when Kavi was shooting, for instance, I would go and be with her when she was shooting her music videos, just for me to get a sense of what she's like. And she's a fascinating character. I mean, she's all of 25 or maybe 26 now. Till 2019, she had never sung a song in her life. She used to administer cosmetic treatments in a small parlor in Haryana. And one day her father, who was this very popular Haryanvi, star, and he sort of acts in movies, he sings songs and so on. She's cooking in the kitchen one day, and while she's cooking, she's humming a song, and the father listens to her humming, and then he says, "Oh my God, you can sing. Let's get her into a studio and try and see if she can actually sing a song." Now, that night they go to the studio right away, and she records a scratch, and he says, "Oh, this is great. We can make it work." What happens after that is they're trying to figure out what this person's persona should be, right? What should she be like? Should she be singing romantic songs? Should she be singing something else, or devotional, or what? And then they're sitting, and the father and the husband are sitting and charting out her career, right? So they're saying, okay, these are the clothes she'll wear, this is how she'll look, and all of that. And just around then is when if you guys remember, the Pulwama terror attack happens of 2019, right, in February. In that moment, there is a viral poetry that comes onto the phones of Kavi and her father, and the poem is extremely polarizing. Kavi's father senses an opportunity. He says, we were thinking about how to launch her. I think this is the moment to launch her, right? So quickly, they try and create a song out of that poem and get her into a studio and record that song. The song essentially is saying that, guys, look, there has been a Pulwama, there has been a terror attack. You might be angry, you might be outraged, you're deeply hurt that 44 of our paramilitary soldiers have been killed. But, don't blame Pakistan for it. Don't blame terrorists for it. Essentially, the people you must blame are the Muslims. Because the Muslims have allowed terrorism to come into the country, and the terrorist who actually, managed to bomb that convoy was a Muslim, and he was allowed to stay on by the local Muslims. Within days of that, Shoma, if you all remember, Kashmiris across the country are attacked. Some of them are told to evict from their homes when they're living outside the state. Some of them are told to go back. Some of them face violent attacks. And in that moment, Kavi's song goes viral, right? And then that is really the origin of Kavi Singh, the pop star. That's the moment when her father and she realized that Hindutva and hate sells. And so then, since then, it's just been this journey where, Kavi Singh is now about 85, 90 odd songs. She dresses in a very peculiar way. She will wear a jacket, a Nehru jacket, a kurta, a dhoti, and a turban, right? So when she's walking, a lot of people would think that she's some sort of a spiritual figure. And when I would travel with her, people would come and sort of touch her feet, because they would think, oh, this is some religious seer who's come to see us. But all of this aside, she's extremely popular at this point. Exactly for all the reasons that the husband and the father mentioned, which is her appearance. People see in her this sort of religious quality, right? This quality where they don't think of her as a pop star anymore. They don't think of her as someone who's trying to gain commercial benefits out of the art. They think of her as someone who's above all of this, who's serving the religious reasons and the causes that ordinary Hindus are fighting for. And that is what makes her so special.
So, it struck me that the father, and he's an adopted father actually, or he adopted her, and they've fallen apart. They were very close. She had a divorce with her husband, but then they went back to living together. So, again, the personal is political. It
Now that
split
you've
them
given them
apart.
the spoilers, I hope people don't not pick up the book.
Oh,
But
sorry. But I'm leaving the other two characters untouched. But why I was bringing that up is because the father says that he wanted to launch her political career. And he said, oh, it's going to cost 15, 20 crores to do it. And that was such a casual statement. It struck me, here's a man who they could not afford paying rent to their Muslim house owner. And that was their circumstances. And now he's talking about 15, 20 crores to launch her political career. What is the funding patterns of all this? Is it that they're getting money from social media? Is it political money? What did you find?
it's fascinating because, I think we often miss the fact that social media platforms are a lifeline to all of these pop stars. Through COVID, for instance, all that she did was just put up songs on the internet. And that would allow her to live a very, very comfortable lifestyle. The other aspect is not just the YouTubes and the Metas and the Facebooks of the world. All of these people, Shoma, all of the stars who sing Hindutva songs are on all audio streaming platforms you can think of, right? So when you go back home tonight, check your Spotify's, check whatever else, wherever else you get your music, and you'll see a Kavi Singh. You'll see other characters who are all on it, earning royalties out of the number of times that people are listening to the songs. So there's a very lucrative financial model that they've been able to strike. The other aspect that that often goes sort of missed in our understanding is that they're co-opted by the Hindu right wing. They're often co-opted by the Bajrang Dals of the world, the VHPs of the world, where as soon as a Kavi Singh becomes popular, these organizations will start giving them platforms across the country. Right, so every time there's a big rally, one of these organizations will call her and pay her sometimes to come and attend it, give her the flight costs and so on. And at least before COVID especially, she would also travel across the country and do concerts where people would pay to be a part of that concert and listen to the kind of songs that she's delivering. So there are various lifelines in terms of financial, sort of sources of income that she's been able to cultivate at least.
So without giving a spoiler, one of your other characters was actually flying in private jets, So is it that, help us understand the scale of this, and did you encounter others, or was it still a kind of minority a small phenomenon? Let's not call it a minority phenomenon. Yeah.
Well, so, it's fascinating. The character that you mentioned, he's this now a very popular sort of singer in this Hindutva pop genre. His name is Kanhaiya Mittal, and around 2022, when Yogi Adityanath was fighting to get re-elected in UP, and I was on the ground reporting this book, I went to the ground, and everywhere in UP, Shoma, I could hear this one song which said, "Jo Ram ko laye hain, hum unko layenge." Right? So those who have got Ram back, it's now our duty to get them back to power. And this song was everywhere, right? I would hear it in shops, I would hear it in buses, it was on people's caller tunes and so on. And when I tried to get in touch with Kanhaiya, I realized that the BJP was quick enough to pick him up. And he would say, "Oh, I'm traveling, there are elections," and there were multiple elections happening at that point in Punjab and I think in Uttarakhand. And he was hopping from rally to rally because the BJP had roped him in as a campaigner. So on his WhatsApp, he had no time to talk to me, which was all right, but on his WhatsApp, he would put up photos of private jets that he was traveling in, right? Where the BJP was sending him to Bhatinda in Punjab and in the morning, and then he would do these live videos saying, guys, I'm still coming to UP in the evening, don't worry, look here, this is the private jet I'm traveling in. So, please don't worry, I will be in that UP concert that I promised you to be. And that is essentially what, Kanhaiya Mittal faced. For a couple of others, during my reporting, I found that some of the poets that I was interacting with, when I would go to these, poetry recital sessions, especially in parts of UP, they would often recite poetry which was so critical of everyone in the opposition, right? So anyone who was a critic of Narendra Modi and the BJP, the poetry would be targeted at them. Now, which was okay because that was the stand that they took. But later, when I interview them, I find out that they were actually members of the BJP's cultural wing. So they were legitimate poets who were very, very popular. But somewhere before the election, the BJP had roped them into their cultural wing, and they were helping the BJP set cultural narratives and agendas. And as a part of that, they were coming and performing as neutral, independent poets, except that people did not know this was the case. So nobody in the audience would know that they were BJP members. Right? So I think the BJP and the Hindu right has mastered the art of being able to use popular culture in ways that it often can't be traced back to, and yet delivers, great amount of success to them.
So, your book describes a lot of the texture of all this, and it really is rousing and angering, and, it would heat up the blood in people. And like you're saying, it's being delivered in ways which are not overtly a political party. So it seems like this is the mood of the people. But again, not to do the whataboutery, Kunal, but it's just become important to address questions that may be playing in people's head. Is that, did you also encounter that, say, would there be a similar kind of subculture on where Muslims are radicalizing, whether it's happening in the madrasas or happening through WhatsApp groups? Do you think that this is a kind of collision of trains and the same phenomenon is playing out again below the radar with other communities also?
Look, I mean, I'm in no way saying that this doesn't happen in other communities. I mean, we've already got evidence of the fact that both in the Muslim as well as the Sikh community, for instance, we've seen, in the recent past, we've seen episodes where you can see that there are actors who are trying to create that sense of radicalization as well. What is different about Hindutva pop is that it is in some ways directly sanctioned by the ruling party. It is approved by the ruling party, and the government in power, which is the ruling party, is happy to sometimes also support it in different ways. Be it access, be it platforming them, be it trying to use them, like I said with Kanhaiya Mittal, trying to use them in their electoral rallies. This is the level of support that Hindutva pop gets, which none of the other forms of radicalization get. On the other side, we're seeing, like I said, with other communities, there might be fringe elements which might be doing this, right? They might be using some of what is happening politically in the country to radicalize people and say, look, you need to respond to that. What's happening in this case is very different because it's not the fringe anymore. It is the mainstream. It is led by the sitting prime minister of the country when he goes on to election rallies and calls a section of our population infiltrators and so on, and people who breed more. So when it's happening right from the level of the prime minister downwards, I think it's very, very different from fringe elements in other communities trying to create some sort of a radicalization in smaller pockets.
So, did you find that, is there kind of homogeneity in this in terms of everybody working to some master plan of narrative creation? Or is it, like you said, cynical opportunism that is popping up? And also, are there shades of this? So again, I do want to urge everybody to buy the book, but there's a third character in your book who actually is very disillusioned with the BJP. And, so help us understand the shades of all this and whether, as I said, is it personal opportunism or is it really being crafted?
Look, so, I mean, I would be very clear in saying this, that I think, just as you said, that the shades of involvement, I think there are also shades of motivation when it comes to just why these people do what they do. So some of them, for instance, are extremely calculative about what they're getting out of this, right? So they will know that, okay, this is what it's getting me in the short term. This is what I want to do, and this might be the best way to do this. But there are other people who for years and years have been doing this, and they've been toying with the model for a while, but they've been extremely committed, Shoma, to the cause, like it or not. Right? They've been doing this even before the BJP came to power, and they've been doing this without any commercial success in mind. And I think it's as journalists, it's also important for us to acknowledge that aspect, Because I think liberal politics often dismisses a lot of this as being motivated by money or fame or whatever else. But you have to realize that there are sections of the population on that side of the divide who are extremely committed to the cause that they have in mind, dangerously committed so, right? So the third character that you mentioned, Sandeep Dev, he is the one that I said, he runs a publishing outfit which only and only publishes Hindutva books. One of his books, for instance, talks about how the Red Fort in Agra is actually a Hindu temple. Now, this has always been a bit of a loony conspiracy theory in the right wing, but he's been able to legitimize it through publishing that 200-page book, and he sells 25,000 odd copies every single year of all the different books that he sells. So for someone like him, the reason why I call he's dangerously and zealously overcommitted is because he's so committed to the cause that he feels, as you said, Narendra Modi is now an absolute sellout in his words, right? And then he's very, very soft on the minorities, and he's lost sight of the Hindutva cause. Now, what he does next is the more dangerous part, where he has now established a political party which is now even farther to the right of the BJP. And it believes that it needs to undo the damage that the BJP is doing by trying to play to Muslims and the minorities. So those are the shades that you often see in this sort of Hindutva galaxy of superstars.
So, again, talking about shades, it was interesting that the RSS chief himself, and India, actually Ashish Nandi once said something very interesting. He said that India is actually a country of such amazing differences that it has a centralizing power. If people try to pull too far apart, then there's another kind of contrapuntal force that pulls it all back to the center, So in an interesting way that the RSS chief, Mohan Bhagwat, said that certain kinds of discourse is not acceptable in a democracy, and that we don't want enmity, we need to live with brotherhood. And, there was a kind of message being sent out that there isn't comfortableness with extreme rhetoric, So I just want to say that that's important and interesting development as well. But when you were talking very importantly about engaging with these phenomena, not just name-calling it, not just dismissing it or scorning it, but engaging with it, and sometimes there are seeds of legitimate grouses or anxieties that need to be addressed and given respect, again, to use Aruna's voice. So when you were reporting this, did you come up with any of that, like legitimate anxieties or grouses that need addressal?
No, 100%. I mean, look, one thing that I told myself, Shoma, when I went in is that I am not going in there to judge these people and to call them names. That's not my job as a journalist at all. I am not going to be sitting there on the high horse, judging them for the choices that they've made or judging them for the rhetoric that they employ. Because my job is not that of a political activist or a political actor. I am there because I need to tell that story to all of you sitting here who may not even know of the existence of these people, right? So I had to be as dispassionate as I could humanly be, and to a great extent. I mean, so I would engage with them to the point where the engagement was always a conversation, right? Very rarely would it get into a debate. And except for this one time, it never got into a dispute. I was absolutely certain that is not something that I wanted to do, because I think one of the reasons why I even wrote this book is that all of us, people who are on either side of the political divide, need to start seeing people who you disagree with as fellow humans, as people who might have similar aspirations, who might have similar fears, similar dreams. Just that they end up making a political choice which is very different from yours. Dehumanizing and villainizing people who believe differently is not the solution at all, because, like it or not, Hindutva is here to stay. And so is the kind of radicalization that the BJP and the RSS and all of the others have been able to do, right? So our best case at this point is to be able to engage with, is to be able to understand what is happening on the other side, and then find ways to tackle. In terms of the genuine grievances that you mentioned, I mean, of course, yes. Sandeep Dev, for instance, who's the publisher I told you about, he used to be a journalist in Hindi newsrooms for many, many years. And one of the things that he told me, and this was before 2014, before Modi came to power, he said, Kunal, I used to be a journalist who used to always have the Hindu cause at heart. And sometimes when I would ask these, questions which I thought were, were questions about Hindus and why certain things were not being reported certain ways and so on, I was never allowed the luxury of a conversation within the newsroom. I was always shunned away from the newsroom saying, oh, you're a communal guy, right? Like he's this terrible communal person. He's a Sanghi and he's so on and so forth. So somewhere in his mind, he said, how good are you as liberals if you're not even allowing me the luxury of conversation? And for me, that remained. Because the definition of liberal politics has to be that, we engage with people who are diametrically opposite to our points of views and give them as much respect as you would give to anyone else. And so, some of these grouses are extremely genuine. Kamal, for instance, the poet, again, he's had a childhood where he's seen things through his own eyes and through his lived experiences, which turned him against Muslims. Now, those experiences, in my view, logically speaking, have nothing to do with the Muslim community. But I think that's where Shoma, liberal education failed him, right? When it failed to tell him that, you shouldn't be judging a whole community of 200 odd million people by the actions of those 2 or 3, 4 people who you've encountered. And so these are conversations that I've carried back, and these are conversations that are going to remain with me because I feel some of them have genuine grouses that we need to on the liberal side of things reflect on and possibly act on.
That's a wonderful note to end on, Kunal. And definitely, that's also a journey that I've become very conscious of, because whether it's from the Kashmir Pandit issue to triple talaq to, just like to have space where people can just voice their thoughts without being caged into this or that. And, we talked about the danger of calling people Andolan GVs or anti-nationals. And similarly, on the other side, it's such, like I said, lazy shorthand to call someone a Sanghi or a whatever, libtard, and that just closes all conversation, and we're not understanding the phenomenon that is actually happening in people's lives. And like you said, some of it confusion, some of it genuine, some of it constructed, but at the very beginning, it needs engagement, and your book is a huge step in that direction. So thank you for writing it.
No, just one last thing that I do want to say is what the lack of engagement does, right? At the start of the conversation, I told you that this possibly is the most dangerous phase of communalism because it has now reached the individual. It no longer needs a leader to lead you on. It's now the individual that they're directly targeting and radicalizing at an individual level through songs, through poetry, through books, through cinema increasingly.
And WhatsApp groups.
And then WhatsApp groups as always, right? So what has happened is, willingly or unwillingly, all of us are being enlisted as members of the mob. And we're seeing signs of that. We're seeing signs that individuals who've had no history of being active into politics are coming up and acting on that hate. I come from Bombay, and not too long ago, if you guys all remember, there was a case of a RPF constable, of a railway police force constable, who's in the train, in a moving train, and after he has a dispute with his senior, he pulls out his automatic gun, and then he looks at every Muslim that he can find, he drags them out, and he shoots them point blank, right? Similarly, in Muzaffarnagar, there was this teacher who was teaching a class full of kids, and she picks on that Muslim kid, brings him out, and then gets every Hindu kid to assault that kid while delivering a hate speech about Muslims. Now, neither of these people, nor the constable, neither this teacher, had any history of being associated with the BJP, the RSS, the VHP, and so on. They were ordinary people like you and me who had just been radicalized to such an extent that they believed that they must act on it before it's too late, right? And which is why I say that it's now reached our doorstep very, very firmly. And engaging is just the first part of it. It's not even solving the problem. It's just the first part of acknowledging that there is a problem here. And I hope that all of you do that. Thank you.
That was a really powerful statement, Kunal. And, I just wanted to again say that a lot of people now talk about this WhatsApp divisions in people's families and how everyone's living in their own literally closed bubble of truths that are so sacrosanct that they can't even hear outside it. And none of that is rooted in fact, It's truths, but not factual. And parents, brothers, siblings, friends, the divisions are so ordinary and quotidian, like you said, and individual. So your book, as I said, is a big sort of move against this. And the book is outside. Kunal will sign books, so please do buy it. And thank you very much for coming, Kunal.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Thank
guys.
you.